In this video, I'm going to show you how I set up this worm bin. Now, worms are a fantastic resource to have in the garden. They break down all of your waste materials into really nice compost, or as most people know it, as worm castings. Now, this is full of life, and it can really bring a garden from being a mediocre garden right up into a really productive garden. And that's coming up after this. Worm bins can be made from all sorts of things. It can be just two Rubbermaid containers, one on top of each other, but they need a couple of fundamental things. You need an area in the bottom where you can collect the fluids, and you need an area at the top where the worms are going to live, i.e. their bed. Now, this is a commercially made worm bin, and later on in the season we're going to make an additional worm bin from something else, and I'll link you guys to that as and when. But in this particular bin, it's got a couple of things. So this is a commercial worm bin, and it has a section like this, and it's just a perforated tray. Now, this tray has 4 legs, and what this does, it keeps the fluids below where the worms are living, and that just sits down into the bottom of this bin. Just like that. The next thing we need is some newspapers, because what we don't want is the worms going through those holes. So we're going to take 3 sheets of newspapers. I'm going to fold them up roughly to the same size of the tray, and that'll do us nicely. And we literally just need to shove that down just like that. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to look at our bedding. Now, where is it? Behind me, I have this here, and this is just a mix of beddings. I've got a bit of clay, pebbles, if you like, in there that are broken up. Now, that helps the worms, because worms don't have teeth, and they very much like poultry, where they have like a little gizzard, and they grind bits of grit and aggregate together to actually break down their food, and that's how a worm works. And we all know it goes in one end, it comes out the other. Same with any other animal species on the planet. So we've got in here some worm castings. We've got the bulk of this is that clay and worm castings, and we're also adding to it some of this, guys, which is my homemade leaf mold. And if you haven't already, I'll get a video put up by here for you of how I produce this leaf mold. Look how fine that is, guys. It's absolutely beautiful. So we'll be chucking a bit of that in there and mixing that up as well, and I'll just add a little bit of organic matter for them. And the other ingredient we use is cocoa coir. This has been pre-soaked, so and it's a coir that has absolutely no feed in it at all. Okay, it's really important that you do that. Now, coir is great for worms because it holds moisture. The other thing about it is that it's totally inert. It's when we add the feeds to coir, so it's a great bedding source. So we're literally just going to chuck a little bit of that on there as well, and all I now need to do is just give this a little mix in, bit quick. Fantastic. So that's our bedding ready, guys. All we're going to do now is place that in there. The first couple of handfuls, I'm going to just be careful how I put it down so I don't screw the paper up, and then the rest of it can go in. Now, we don't want to fill this bucket up. There we go, that'll do. We don't want to fill the bucket up, that's really important. Worms always live in a layer that's quite close to the top, and what they do is they process the food that we're going to put in here, And then once they've done that, they move up to the next layer. And it's really important when you've got your worm bin to keep it moist. Worms don't like dry areas, okay? They're going to die if you do that. Keep it moist constantly, and we'll show you a way of that now in a moment. So here I've got my worms, and as you can see, they are nice worms. What I'm going to do, I'll put this on here and we'll pour them out into here. Now I have a kilo of worms here, and these are tiger worms. Now a tiger worm is really good because they're quite a large worm. As you can see, they're quite large. But the other thing about tiger worms is because they are large, they can process a lot more food, okay? They're really good at processing this food. There are other worms out there like red wrigglers and brandling worms and stuff like that that you can use in that you get in compost heaps and horse manure piles and things like that, and they can all be used. They're all composting worms. What you can't use are standard garden worms that you would dig in the garden, because they're not going to compost down that well. So what we do with these worms now, we literally just add them to the compost. So I'm going to add this with the soil it's in, and they're all going down into the compost down there. And that's that done. So now we've got quite a lot of worms in there. They'll now work their way down into the compost below. We've already pre-soaked this, and what I would say to you guys, you can literally just wring out, if I get this now, I can just wring out a little bit of water. Look, there's not a lot in there, so we know this is moist enough but not overly wet. So we know now them worms are going to go down and they're going to be happy. We're going to leave them for a week. We're not going to put any food in this bin now for a week. We're going to let them settle in. Over that week, those worms are going to settle in, and then we're going to start feeding, and we're going to feed on one side of the bin for 1 week, and when all of that food is gone, we're then going to feed on the next side of the bin. Now this helps us later on when we want to take the worm castings out of this bin, and we'll cover that in a later episode. By feeding on one side or the other, most of the worms are going to congregate around that feed, which means that we can then scoop them out, and all the worm castings will be underneath and to the other side of where you're not feeding. So that helps us there. Now the next thing is for us to get a load of paper like this. It's probably about 8 or 10 sheets here, and we need to fold it over. So for this I am going to roughly measure it, and that's ideal. Okay, what I need to do with this now is go and soak it. There we go. So we now have a nice thick layer. Now you can use a bit of carpet and things like that. That's perfectly fine, and the worms will stay under there. But by using newspaper, the worms will actually get in between the layers, and they'll also lay their eggs in there, and that's where you can then obviously increase your yields. But for now, we're going to place this over the top, just like that. And those worms, let me just show you, are already pretty much down in the soil. They're already gone down. So we're literally going to place that now over the top, and that's the worms really settled in there. This lid here, okay, it's got some foam around the lid, which when it closes will actually seal down tight, so the worms can't escape, because they will climb up the sides of this bin. And it's also got a couple of little air holes just here, so any gases and things like that can escape. And on the bottom down here, you can't see it in the camera, we've got a little tap. Now that's really important as well, because we need to get the fluids out of here, because they will create a lot of fluids, and we're going to be watering as well. So what we do there is we open that tap and we collect that juice, because that is worm tea, or worm juice, or there's all sorts of names for that. But that is a really good feed for the garden, and if you use that in a 10-to-1, watered down 10-to-1, That is a fantastic fertiliser for the garden, and it's totally organic. So by having a worm farm, okay, it's really good for your garden, because not only are you getting the worm castings, which are a fantastic way to incorporate nutrition into the garden, you're getting the worm tea as well. Now, feeding, you can pretty much use all the vegetable scraps you have except potato peelings, guys. Keep them out there, and any citrus. The worms just don't like it, all right? Now, a lot of people I've seen, when they get their worm bins, they cut it up and then they put it in big chunks and what have you. That's really hard. As we spoke about earlier on, worms have a gizzard, they don't have teeth, so it's really hard for them to break that down, and they have to wait for it to pretty much rot before they can do that. So what I do is I blend my vegetable peelings, okay, until it's like a pulp, and then I feed the worms that way, okay. One other thing we need to consider then is siting. In the winter, we need to put it somewhere that's that we can keep it right out of the cold and the frost and everything else. So ideally, in a polytunnel is perfect place. It doesn't get too hot in the winter, and it's ideal. But likewise, when it starts getting warmer in the spring and the summer, the last place you want to keep it is in a boiling hot polytunnel. It's quite cool in here, so at the moment we're going to keep them inside, because the temperatures, as you guys know, at this time of year at the moment, are still quite cold. So what we're going to do is we'll keep them in here, and then as it starts to warm up, we'll move them out and we'll place them in a shaded area, so that way the worms can keep quite cool and they can get on with their day. As we're feeding, the levels will rise, and when we're probably up to about this level here, we're going to harvest those worms castings. We'll just get a tray like this one, and we'll scrape off most of the worms that we can, okay, and then we will take them worm castings and we will use them as and where we feel fit. Now, in those worm castings are going to be lots and lots of worm eggs, so you're actually increasing the life in your garden as well. And we've spoken loads of times about soil fertility and the web soil life forms, and that is something that this system can help you with. Now, as I said earlier in the video, we are going to have another video with regards to building a different type of worm bin, because I am going to have another worm bin, but I wanted to show you how to set up something this small. Now guys, question of the day: how many of you have got worm bins out there, and how many of you use the worm castings, and what do you use them for? Put it in the description and the comments below, because I would love to see how many of you are actually utilizing the benefits from a worm bin, and hopefully we can get a conversation going over this quite a fascinating subject, really, to be honest with you. Anyway guys, that's it from me today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button, okay. Visit us on Facebook, because we've got loads of stuff going on over there. And just as a little bit of an idea, I'm currently running a competition for the giant marrow seeds over there. It's not a competition, it's more of a giveaway. So get yourself over to the Facebook page, and then we can get involved in that as well. One other thing, if you are on Facebook and you use Facebook Messenger, we now have a YouTube bot. You can click on a link on our Facebook page, and that YouTube bot will actually send you an update every time we upload, and it'll send it right into your Facebook Messenger. So you can literally just see it, click on it, and it'll open it up from there. Anyway guys, that's it from me. I hope this episode was of enjoyment to you, and if you haven't already, share our videos, click the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.